Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today I'm going to be using the Saint Nick stamps and dies along with the Snowfall stencil. This one I showed you but I didn't end up using it. Also this one I showed you and I didn't end up using it. And the layering snowflakes. There's a reason why I didn't end up using those and I'll explain that shortly. So I actually colored this snowman, sorry Santa, I colored this Santa Claus for a live for Honeybee almost a month ago, and really loved this. I just really like it. It's like an old vintage Santa. I really like the image. And so I wanted to do it with a different kind of background technique. And so here, the other reason for creating the card today, in addition to the fact that I just enjoyed the Santa, was I know not everybody has time to watch the replay to see the coloring. The coloring is in real time. So if you're interested in real-time coloring, I will link that live below. But if you didn't have time to watch the live, which I think was like an hour and a half, then this is kind of a little bit sped up, more condensed version so that you can still see the coloring of this stamp. So I'm stamping it down. I am using our intense black ink, which is safe for Copic markers, because that is how I'm going to be doing my coloring. Now, normally you would see, because I like to do my background first, the background before we got to the coloring. But today it's different because the background that I created didn't end up matching the image. And sometimes that happens. And that doesn't mean that the image is bad or that the background is bad. It just means that they aren't the same style, or they're not the same color palette, or they don't go together for some reason. And I ended up saving the background and using it to do a completely different card. So I did save that footage and I will have that card for you either later this week or next weekend. But either way, like, you don't have to force it. If you made something that was really pretty and it doesn't go with your something else that's really pretty, just set it aside and be okay with that. Like, I took one look at it and I was like, you know what, this would really go so much better with the Polar Pals. And so then that's what I did. And I created a different background for my Saint Nick here. So for creating the shading that I'm going for, I just picked out some, this is my usual kind of go-to color combination for Caucasian skin. I'm adding shading where his hat lays over his face, where his mustache and his beard come up over his face. And then also he's like this jolly, great big jolly Santa. So his, eyes are kind of squinted up as he's smiling. And so I added shading there as well. Lightest to darkest, darkest to lightest. You guys know how this rolls if you watch my videos. And so I am just going through there. I will be adding a little bit of a pink cheek, because what is Santa without his rosy cheeks? Honestly, I mean, I just can't. There is a ton of white coloring in this image because his, the trim for his hat, as well as his little snowball, his eyebrows, his mustache and his beard, the trim for his jacket and his gloves, all white. So here I went in originally with the R20 and it just was not pink enough for me. So I just went back in with a little bit of a slightly brighter reddish pink, the R32. I think it's actually called Peach, and blended that in before I started in coloring my whites. For the whites, I am only adding the shadows. So when you're coloring something white, that's all you're doing. You're still leaving white cardstock, and that is your highlight. But all the grays we're putting in are just shadows. And he's going to look pretty gray until we get some more color on him. But don't fret. The reason that we have to start with the grays first is because if I color his whole outfit, which is red, and then I try to go back in with my grays, which are going to be a lighter color, and I bump, touch, rub up against any of that red with my marker, I'm going to pick it up and I'm going to smear it into his beard, into the trim of his hat, into wherever that I don't want it. So start with your lightest colors and then work out to your darkest in your image, as well as through your set of markers. It's just a good rule of thumb, lightest to darkest. So what has life been doing? Today was kind of a fun day. The dogs are barking. you know that the dogs would be barking in the middle of my voiceover while Caitlin is taking a nap, because that's how the universe works. Did you know that? Did you know that that happens to you when you're just trying to accomplish something? That's what happens to your life. So I'm sure it's one of my son's friends. I'm positive of it, in fact, because I can hear them talking. And unfortunately, he probably rang the doorbell, which is like the bane of all parents' existence when you have children that still take naps, the doorbell. Anyway, so today was kind of fun because I did a little live over at Pink Fresh, and I got to talk to Jeff Lindbergh, who was super fun, and we made a card. I learned something about myself, which is I do not card make quickly. Did you know that? I bet you did, because this video is 30 minutes long. I'm not super fast at the card making because I enjoy the process so much. And so this is kind of what I wanted to talk about a little bit. I touched on it in the last video, and also if you caught that live in there. I have discovered that the card making for me is not so much about the end result, but it is the journey to get there. I wish I could have that outlook on life, because sometimes I just want to get there and I don't want to go through the process. But I really think that that is kind of my thing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I struggle with using dyes, or I struggle with using stencils sometimes. I do like the stencils, but even with the stencils, I always end up going in there and kind of making it my own. And I think it's because I don't get as much enjoyment out of the process. I don't feel creative when I'm just die cutting something and then gluing pieces together. So isn't that interesting? I never really thought about, I knew I didn't like enjoy the finicky pieces of the dies, but I think that's one of the reasons why I have such a hard time with them, is because I don't feel, it doesn't feel like a creative outlet for me. Which doesn't mean that it doesn't for anybody else. There's plenty of people who use dyes, enjoy dyes, really like them, and the whole process of them. But I think that's why I don't. Which is so funny, because I've been doing, card making for, what are we, 10, 12, 15 years? I haven't been on YouTube that long, but I've been making cards since 2009. Yeah. And I'm just now realizing that the reason that I don't like that is because I missed the process, which I think is why coloring is so appealing to me. Because there's this whole process from blank cardstock to beautiful colored image. So yeah, just kind of fun learning different things about yourself. So here I got the trim done, and the beard, the mustache, the little poof ball. I'm sure the poof ball has a name, but I don't know what it is. And then for the hat, gloves, the sleeves, gloves, and then his little trim in the middle, like where his jacket would be zippered together, those are also going to be white. And as far as the shadows go, I'm really just using the lines that are already there. In some cases, I'm kind of extending out past the line. You could see that in his trim of his hat for sure, and in his beard, but I'm still leaving lots of white area. Now, it definitely looks gray right now, but like I said, it will until we start to add a couple of more colors, and it has something to compare to besides stark white. So if you feel like your coloring is a little bit too gray, fear not. Once you add some more color, I'm sure that it will start to get whiter as you go. So yeah, I'm trying to think as far as, like life goes and what we've been doing. We had, what did we have? We had Caitlin's pictures. I talked to you about that already. And then we went to the Christmas Connection. So this is a thing that they do locally. We might have talked about it before because we typically go every year. Me, my mom, and both of my sisters. And you have to set aside like a day, y'all. You have to set aside a day because there's so much stuff, so many vendors. And it just fills it just fills the place, and it's huge. So it's like an exposition center. That's where they do this at. And it's so big. Like, this is the place where they do, like, when they open it all the way up, they do, like, trucks in there. They do, what are they? The monster trucks, that's it. So they do all kinds of stuff in there. But this is just half the building, and it's still enormous. So my mother always looks forward to it. Obviously, it's a day that she gets to spend with all of her children. Let's go back to the card real quick. So here, when I'm shading this glove, I actually started shading part of the bell, and I didn't realize it. So this is no real big deal, because that part is going to be the darkest part of the bell, since it is kind of encapsulated in his hand. So even though I added the shading with the grays. And so this is something I'll just be able to go right over with my other colors, and it's not going to be problematic. But just so you know, when you're coloring the image, there's a bell there. It's not just his hand. There's the top of the bell. So my mom looks forward to this. She had asked me several weeks ago, hey, this is the date. We could go on Friday while Nathan's at school and Caitlin's at daycare. Your sisters are willing to take off work, so that way you don't have to try to find, a babysitter on a Saturday. And so she was very sweet. She bought the tickets and emailed them to me. Like, I literally had to do nothing but show up. So I doubled down on work this week to make sure that I would have all of my things going and done. Like, for example, this video has been edited for probably like 4 days, and I just held off on doing the voiceover part so that it would be up to date for story time. For the coloring that we're doing right now, these yellows, you could do them any color that you wanted. I just thought the gold was more traditional, and since he is kind of like a vintage Santa, that's why I chose to go with the golds. But I did a video on my channel a while back that showed you how to color gold, silver, or copper for the holiday season. Any one of those would totally work. I just thought the silver might be a hair too close to my white, and the gold is a good contrast. And already you can see in that hand, now that we're starting to add the yellows, that it's getting more white and less gray. Somebody had made the comment where I had colored a white poinsettia, and they're like, poinsettias are not gray. And I was like, but I know. Thank you, though. I get that they are not gray, but when you're coloring something white, you have to add the shadows. I might have gone a little over with the shadows. Sometimes that happens, but most of the time, by the time that you're done, it does end up looking truly white. So I doubled down on work to make sure that I would get all my things done so that I would be able to go. And there's always something, you know how it is, like things pop up, things get just, messed up. And so I ended up Thursday night into Friday morning having to, like, after everybody went to bed, I stayed up to get the rest of my work done so that I would still be able to go on Friday. On Friday, my husband very generously took both of the kids to where they were going so that I could just get up and get ready, because I was meeting my mom at 9:30. Like, all of us were meeting at 9:30. And so I pretty much just rolled out of bed, made my tea, brushed my teeth, brushed my hair, did very minimal makeups, got dressed, and left. So she drove with my middle sister, and then my oldest sister and I drove together because I drove separately just in case I needed to leave. Because that's how it is when you got small kids. You gotta have a game plan. So we went in, and normally there's 2 different entrances. And so we usually park in the west, and then you just walk in. They have like food there and, different vendors that you walk up and down these aisleways. And there's this huge line outside, like massive line. And Michelle and I are like, what is happening? Like, what is this line for? Well, these people are like walking back to their cars because like I told you, it is huge. So a lot of people, like, they're not wearing coats. They're like ditching their stuff in their car and just kind of making a break for the door. But it's a balmy 33 degrees outside on this day, and it's windy and it's slightly snowing. Not a huge amount of snow, but just a little bit, kind of like whipping around the air. And so they're coming back to get their coats, and we're like, what is going on? So for some reason, and I do not know why, I'm not sure why they didn't tell us when we pulled in for the parking that entrance was closed. I feel like they probably should have said something before we paid our $10 for parking. But they had like a shuttle. But the shuttle was like a half bus, more like a van. And so they were taking people, driving around to the other side, dropping them off, and then so on and so forth. But you had to wait outside in the cold. Like, there's no protection. You're just outside in the elements. And I'm like, this is a horrible plan. So then we're trying to figure out, like, do we just drive mom over to the other side, drop her off, and then come back and park? What do we need to do so that our mother is not waiting outside in the cold? While we're having this conversation, somebody inside the building gets the great idea that they're going to open the entrance. Even though it's supposed to be closed, they're going to open it, which was a really, really good idea because most people park in that parking lot. So they opened the doors and they were like, only if you have your ticket. So if you pre-bought your ticket. Thank God mom pre-bought our tickets. So we could just walked in, showed them our phones with our tickets, and then we were in. The reason it was closed is because they were doing construction on that side. But literally the construction was like all the way over in this other corner. It wasn't even by the door. So I'm not sure what the thought process was there, but nonetheless, they remedied it, and we were off to the races on the shopping for this particular thing. And it's called the Christmas Connection. Everything is, kind of Christmas related. Let's talk about the card for a second. So you can see that I've been shading his belt black. I did leave a little bit of a highlight down at the bottom. Don't worry about doing this. If this is something that's a little bit too challenging, no fear. Just add it in with a white gel pen. Just do a couple little streaks of white to give you that highlight on the belt for the white gel pen. And then we're going to get into the coloring of the rest of his suit. We've done all the colors at this point except for the red. And I'm just going to kind of work section by section. Couple of things to note: where his hat is bent over, we're going to have shading on the bottom part where it's tucked behind, and then also shading coming up from his little fuzzy ball. For the coat, we're going to have shading where his arm is bent in that little crook of his elbow. There'll be shading on both of his arms, I'm pretty sure. And then where his arm is over his belly, where his beard lays on his shirt, that will all be shading as well. So just some things as we're going through to keep in mind. So anyway, so now we're off to the races, and there was such an issue with, like, everything was really nice, and we found a lot of Christmas presents and a lot of really good things, and they have like taste testers and things like that, and there's specific things that every year we look for. My mom buys Peanut his jam and jelly. They have like a small business that does homemade jam and jelly, and he loves the caramel apple one. So my mom wanted to get that, and then she wanted to get his barbecue sauce, which unfortunately they were out of. But yeah, just really fun things. You can get personalized gifts there, all kinds of stuff. But I felt really bad for them. So the first, it was like 2 in, honestly. It was like right when we walked in. We found some Christmas gifts there, and my sister Michelle found something, I found something, and my sister Kim found something. So Michelle goes first. She checks out with her card, no issues. I'm second. My card won't go through. It's not being declined. The Wi-Fi isn't working. And she's so apologetic, and I'm so sorry, and, I don't know what's going on. It just worked. And I'm like, I know, that's my sister. I know, I literally watched it work. So, like, then we're, kind of back and forth or whatever. And one of her helpers was like, if you have cash, I can help you over here. So we decided, okay, well, we're just going to go get cash. Like, I did have some on me, but not as like to get me through the whole day kind of thing, because most vendors take a card, so I had both. So we decided we're going to go get cash and then come back, which is a really, really good thing that like, I know there's a whole generation that doesn't carry cash at all, but I'm telling you, none of these people's things worked. Like the little squares to check out, none of them were working. So apparently, after listening to one of the vendors talk, I guess the place was charging like $80 a day for them to use their Wi-Fi, or there was free Wi-Fi. But even though they paid for it, it's not, the Wi-Fi isn't working because everybody is trying to use it. Whether they're trying to use the free network or the paid for network, they're being overloaded. And so, like, I watched this one lady, there's a jewelry cleaner that they always sell there that I really like. Plus, they clean my ring while I'm there, and I always appreciate that because, you know, I'm not going to no jewelry store to get it cleaned, even though I should. I don't. And, like, the people in front of us, you know, she was doing her little demo. She's put in all the work. You know, this is the deal we have, this, and this. And the lady was like, yeah, I'll take the whole set. And she was like, okay, I have to do cash. And the lady's like, sorry, I don't have any. And like, she totally just lost a sale because of this Wi-Fi. And I know she is not the only one. Like, I'm sure it just happened time and time and time again to these poor vendors who are spending their whole day there and are, you know, they've made the, preparations, you know, they've paid for the Wi-Fi, or they, you know, have done whatever they needed to do to make sure that their, day was going to go smoothly, and then it just did not. I felt bad for them. So fortunately, that wasn't too much of, like I said, wasn't too much of an issue for us. But I did feel bad for the people who were selling the things. So we went and did that. And normally what we would do is we would go do the shopping, and then usually we go out to dinner together. But I could not do that. I didn't have enough time. So I knew I was going to spend all day doing that. And so right around like 2 o'clock. Now, mind you, we got there at 10:30. So at 10 o'clock, I told my mom, I was like, hey, I know you like to go get food, so we can do this other section, or we can leave and go eat together. Like, those are our choices. And so she wanted to finish out that section, which was fine. So we ended up doing that. And then instead of trying to sort all of our bags in the cold, we just put everything in my sister's car and then just met back at my parents' and kind of sorted through everything, which worked out really well. But I am not a shopper. Let's just talk about the card for a second here. So can we see now how we've added the red, and everything on the left-hand side of the card is getting much, much whiter. And everything on the right is still a little bit gray. I apologize for my camera. I'm not sure why it got blurry there, but it doesn't seem to have held. So like everything on the left, now that we've added the red, is getting much whiter, and that will only be increased once we put it on our background. So don't be nervous if you're coloring your whites and it looks gray. Mine does too, but it won't stay that way. So, yeah, so that worked out pretty nicely. I'm not a shopper. And I don't know, I think I've shared this with you before. Like, my mom is 100% a shopper. Like, she could just shop until she drops is no exaggeration for my mama. And so I'm like I said, I'm pretty sure I've told you this before. So when we were younger, you know, every Sunday we would go shopping, and we would, of course, go with mom because dad was at home watching football. And, you were just trapped, y'all. I love my mother. I love my sister, but we were trapped because she wanted to shop, and then she had to do the grocery shopping, and then like you just couldn't be free of it. So now I totally shop, which is more typical of a man, is I'm in and out. I'm in, I get my items, and I'm out. So back to the card. Here is the original background that I created. You'll see this again. Like I said, I did end up using it, but see how it doesn't match? It just doesn't go. They don't make sense together. And so we're going to create a different background. This is some navy cardstock. I am going to add a little bit of shading to my cardstock, mostly in the top and along the bottom right hand side, because my Santa is going to take up that whole bottom left, so I'm not really worried about shading there. And I'm just using Chip Sapphire and Black Soot. And this is just going to just give me a little bit of dimension. And you guys know I use the word interest all the time. And a little more interest. So I'm just going to blend that on there. And then I'm going to bring in that Snowfall stencil, which I really like. Even though it's open, even though it's a bigger pattern, I think it's really pretty. So here, even before we do the stenciling, like this matches my guy much better. So now with the stenciling, I am going to tape this down so it's not moving. Normally I use repositionable adhesive. That is also an option. I just didn't want to take the time to do it. I'm just being honest here. Because my first background already didn't work out, and so now I'm switching. I'm going to use our Brilliant White Pigment ink, and I'm going to ink blend right onto this navy cardstock. And I was just thrilled with the way that it showed up. So this is such a fun way to do some stenciling on darker cardstock. And it normally pigments ink take forever to dry. Like you're just there all day waiting for it to dry, or you have to heat set it. But because we're using the blending brush, this is the Honeybee Detailed blending brushes, we're putting on such a minimal amount that it really does dry almost completely right away. I'm also, because I like the shimmer, I am very lightly going to spray some iridescent shimmer spray right on top of the stencil, just to give it a little bit more glittery look. And then I'm going to do a little door hinge here so you can see what it looks like before I do the next step. So this is super pretty. Love the way that this looks. And I put it down, taped it back down, because I'm going to go in with some white acrylic paint and a stiff bristled brush. I'm going to put that right on a acrylic block and just drag it down the side, which is going to create a snow-like look, and it's going to put some texture into my snowflakes. Now, you don't have to do this by any means. It's just another way to get a little bit more interest or more dimension into the background, because the paint, when it dries, is actually going to be textured. Alternatively, you could remove the stencil and then do the same splatter effect for a more snow-like effect. So now that's done. I have some white glitter paper here, and I am just going to cut out a couple of different snowflakes. I didn't even cut mine apart. I just used the smaller ones on the side, and that means some of them aren't going to be cut out all the way, but don't worry, we're going to use those too. So this is more of that same navy colored cardstock. I chose the Have a Holly Jolly Christmas sentiment because he is so jolly, guys. He's so jolly. So I'm treating this with my anti-static tool. I am going to stamp this down in that same white ink because I am going to be heat embossing with white. This pigment ink, as well as both the metallics from Honeybee, are great with embossing powders. Stamping that down, heat setting with a white detail embossing powder. And then these also have companion dies in that same St. Nick set. That's where this is from. And so I will cut it out with that. So everything is all like their sentiment dies are just the best. Like they're so tight in there, and it gives you fun shapes. It's not super boring squares. I just really appreciate that about them. So here I am lining that up, and I'm going to cut that out. And then here are my snowflakes, my glitter snowflakes. These are layering ones. You can stack them up different ways, 2, 3 of them to get different looks. I'm not going to stack them today. I'm going to use them as singles. And then here, like this one's cut off. I'm going to use it anyway because I'm going to tuck it back behind my Santa. So you guys know how I roll with the white outline. I am going to just go in there with a navy colored marker, and again, Do as I say, not as I do. Do this before you die cut it. I always forget when I have a solid color because I'm used to trying to blend them into a scene, and I almost always forget to do it. But your life is so much easier if you do it before you die cut. I'm going to adhere him down to no, I'm lying. This is why I use the Tombow. I was like, why am I using that? Because it dries repositionable. And so I'm just going to lay him here while I adhere my snowflakes, and then I will adhere him down permanently. So I am going to use my honeybee glue to glue my sentiment down. I'm not pushing it down on the actual card base. I'm only pushing it down on the Santa side. And then right where it meets that little tiny snowflake that's tucked behind it, I am going to push that up into the glue as well. For the other snowflakes, I'm going to glue them down flat. I am adhering them permanently. And even though this is a little bit busier for me, I really liked the way that this card came out, where you have these kind of bright white glittery snowflakes up front, and then the more subtle stenciled snowflakes in the back with all of that like snowfall texture. I just thought it was a really fun kind of card. So you'll have to let me know what you guys think. I know it's a little bit different than what I normally do. We were talking about something, but I'm going to tell you that I don't remember what it was. The shopping. We were talking about the shopping, and then I think that was it. Was it just the shopping? I think so. That's what I'm going to go with. That's what I'm going to go with. That's the only downside to the YouTube voiceovers is if we were having this conversation in a live, or if we were having this conversation in real life, you would be able to tell me what it was I was talking about before I got off on a tangent. So adding some glitters like I normally do, Santa should be glittery, and then that's it. That's the whole card. So you can see that those images still look white. You can see how well that Brilliant White Pigment ink shows up on the background. Such a fun way to get kind of more out of those darker cardstocks. Really happy with the way this one came out. Thank you guys so much for joining me, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.